tremendous pleasure in welcoming Rehan, the one and only Rehan Khan, for this fireside chat. I'm sure you're not seeing the fire here, but you'll kind of witness that in the talk. A quick update. I think Rehan is now doing much more and far more interesting stuff. He recently moved on from MSD and he's setting up a very, very exciting stealth platform, pharmaceutical platform backed by a very, very well-known global P firm. So, in due course of time, you will get to hear more about that. But how do I introduce somebody who is so popular, so famous in the industry? So maybe I'll just, kind of try to draw upon my past association with him. I've had the privilege of working with Rehan. I've had the privilege of, in multiple roles and in multiple assignments. Rehan is truly a global citizen, born in the UK, roots from Aligarh, UP, has lived around 25 cities or more probably across the world, across different continents, Africa, Latin America, Europe, US, India, of course. He has been his home for a long, long time now, and he has successfully scaled up businesses like Abbott Nutrition, where he absolutely did magic with a 6x scale up in less than 4 years, and really, really brought nutrition to the fore. Subsequently, he scaled up the pharmaceutical business. In fact, turned around the pharmaceutical business and scaled it up for Abbott Pharmaceuticals. He later, went on, to do a stint in Singapore in a very, very niche specialty and came back. And his last role before his now very exciting stealth build-up that he's doing was with MSD, where, again, he built Keytruda into it was a marvelous, marvelous scale up into one of the, in fact, the largest brand. If IQVIA doesn't track it very well, but almost more than 2,000 crores, which is huge for an oncology brand, a global brand. And of course, Gardasil again is a great, great story. So somebody who is so strong in putting up very, very strong teams, scaling up the business, turning around businesses, and I'm really, really eagerly awaiting, what is next to come from Rehan in this very, very exciting new avatar. Welcome, Rehan.
Thank you, Raja, and thank you very much. I think I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see so many people here this early in the morning. So that's wonderful. I was wondering if today would be great for us to have a dialogue, but if you have comments, suggestions, ideas, thoughts, I'm in the midst of building a new business, and I can see a lot of very smart people here. Would love to get your thoughts. So Raja, I don't think, let's just jump into the dialogue, and it'll be great to get your questions as well.
I think there are a lot of founders in this room, there are investors in this room, and there are people who have very successfully scaled up businesses. But regardless, my first question to you, Rehan, is the uncomfortable truth about scale, right? I mean, you see many, or if not most, nutraceutical companies in India who are great at growing, but then how do they build something to scale and stay big? Because if on one hand you are chasing scale as founders, and on the other hand you're looking at sustainability. So what is it that they need to be careful about? The scale ambition and balance it with sustainability in terms of the growth both on the top line as well as on the EBITDA, and kind of still not losing focus and bringing the right solutions to their customers.
So in my view, 2 or 3 things. Number one, any of the early stage companies that I've invested in, the 2-3 places where I felt that they stumbled. One was investing most of their money into the brand. Number 2 was trying to hire as smart a talent as possible, which is very difficult. I know when you're starting a new venture. But if you spend your money on other things like a nice office or corporate branding or sponsoring, events like this, that's probably not going to get you far. But a laser focus on your brand and your category is really important. And let me give you an example. If you look at health food drinks category in this country, it's over $1 billion category. 15, 16 years ago, when we first started to enter this category in the venture Raja referred to in Abbott Nutrition with Pediasure, we were a $5-7 million business. How do you get that business to $100 million? There's absolutely no way to do it unless you look at that category and figure out month by month on an annual basis, and then over the next 3-4 years, what will you do that a Horlicks is not doing? What will you do that the other competitors are not doing? That number one. Number two, how will the customer, the end buyer, and the consumer, the doctor, for example, in our case, as well as the mother, how will they make a choice for our brand continuously? And I'll just expound on that just very quickly. One time we were in a chawl in Worli. For those of you who don't know what a chawl is, it's a large tenement. It's not far from here. Average person in that chawl earned about 15,000 rupees a month. We went there and we started talking to mothers. And we talked to mothers, we realized most of those mothers were buying our cans, our product, at 400 rupees a can. So they were spending roughly 10% of their monthly income on our product. So out of that insight for our brand, which is continuous and very important, what do? Number one, we increase the price. Number two, we create SKUs that are more accessible to that target group, meaning instead of having a 400-gram tin, we have a 50-gram tin or 50-gram sachet or a 100-gram tin or whatever. Now, my point is, unless you focus continuously, laser focus on your brand and your category and spend most of your money there, rest of your money on your talent, it's really, really hard to scale your business. Because certainly the couple of places I've invested in where I've really regretted and lost all my money are companies that set up a very nice office, they almost become multinational-like by spending a ton of money on things that are not really important. Two things: one, brand and their category, and two, their talent. So those two things, Raja.
Imagine the mother or parents spending 10% of their monthly income, for their child. That really shows the belief in the brand, which is probably a nice segue into my next question. Today, when you see there is a proliferation of, is it okay now? Okay, thank you. No, I was saying that it's incredible to think that parents are spending about 10% of their monthly income on the right nutrition for their child, which is amazing. Even on such a small income base. So that leads to my next question. Today, if you look at it, you go to any good store, any department store or a pharmacy, you see a proliferation of brands, right? You see so many nice fancy packed bottles, some imported, some indigenous brands, and some nutraceutical offerings. But everyone has a story, and everyone has a claim. What in your opinion, Rehan, is the right balance between tall claims and, in this case that you narrated, that evidence-based science that actually delivers the intended value for the consumer? Where does a CEO take, or a founder take that? How does he or she balance that fine line between tall claims and evidence-based science?
So, couple of things. I think those founders that are building a business, you'll know it better than I, certainly. I have no right to give any of you any advice. But what I would say is, depending on the type of product you've got, if you're distinguishing that product using science and clinical medicine and data, you have to go to physicians in this country for them to prescribe your product. That's normally the route. Or you got to deal with a hospital, but even then, the physician has to believe in your science to write the product. Number two, your product has to be available. Modern trade, traditional trade, chemist shops. Now, most chemist shops in this country, many other countries like Egypt, etc., are not chemist shops anymore. They are traditional trade with FMCG products in the front and pharma in the back. So your product has to stand out, number two. Number three, the patient or the healthcare consumer has to have a reason to buy your product. Why are they buying your product? Now, you can say, look, I'm going to get a movie star, or Shah Rukh Khan or somebody, and put them out there. But you have to be very careful, because if your primary distinction is based on science, clinical medicine data, then that is your first approach. And you have to be very careful when you start consumerizing the product. And I'll give you a small example. We were selling a product, for adults, and I think Raja used to run that business at the time. This is a product for, if you fall ill, you can recover, a product called Ensure. And In that process, the first couple of years, all we did is build that product's profile in hospitals, clinics, with physicians, with specialists. We did not do any consumerization at all. Now, many of you may challenge that and say, listen, you're leaving money on the table. And my belief was, and our belief was as a team, that you have to wait long enough for the product to establish its credentials with the doctors, with the primary writers of this product, and then you can consumerize. Same thing with Pediasure, which eventually became a 500-600 crore product and close to $100 million product. 5-6 years, we did no consumerization at all. So I think, Raja, the question for any founder is, who is your buyer? Now, if you're selling protein powder and you're getting, using Instagram influencers, that makes a lot of sense. For you, that makes a lot of sense. But if you're going to use data, if you're going to use science, if you're going to distinguish using data and science, then do not dilute your credibility by going completely the consumer way, because again, your writer of your product will not write it. One last point. Eventually, when we did start to consumerize many of these products, and not just these two products, but other products like Digene, many people said to me, listen, you're going to destroy credibility with physicians. You're covering thousands of pediatricians and gynecologists. And our belief was, we don't want the doctor to always prescribe the product. If the doctor validates the product, that's good enough. As far as the consumer goes and asks for a product. In a private country like ours, where most of healthcare is privatized, if the consumer or patient asks for a product, 90% of the time, doctor is not going to refuse it. I'll give you another example before we move on. We have a product recently that I worked in the last 5-6 years called Gardasil. I don't know how many people know the product in the audience. It's an HPV injection that prevents women and men from having cervical cancer and other types of cancer if you take this product early enough. Yeah? So if you're exposed to HPV, you're going to be able to protect yourself. Now, question is this: should you consumerize this at all? This is not a nutrition product. And our belief was, yeah, we should. So in a very aggressive way, using 75 influencers, using movie stars, using India's, Femina Miss India, many others, we spent 3 years consumerizing it. The sales of the product, and I'm not telling you any secrets, this product was $2 million 5 years ago. Today, the product is $50 million, 25 times in 5 years. Now, that's not a large number for many of you, especially those of you who work in Europe or work in the US. But in this market, where the category didn't really even exist, the product was just $2 million, for that to go 25 times, that cannot happen just by working with physicians and with hospitals. That you have to go out and educate the patient and the consumer. And you have to do it in a way where the patient feels respected. Because depending on the category, that can also offend the patient and convey a message that you don't want to convey.
No, I think that's a great insight, Rehan. I still remember how somebody called me, and it was my own training head who said that I had the privilege of launching the first ever oncology nutrition product. And in a week's time, he said his father, who had throat cancer and who was a professor, retired, could regain, not just weight, but also a little bit of his throat. So, there's no substitute to science. And like you rightly said, you have to be very, very careful in terms of, how you take it. Which also leads to my next question, right? There's a lot of evidence-based science, that you gave multiple examples of, with Ensure, with, Gardasil and what have you. And, today's founders are a lot under pressure, to show that hockey stick growth. Drawing back on your Abbott Nutrition Insights, even back in 2009, 2012, when in 4 years, you had that very, very significant 6x scale up of top line and, phenomenal team and great brands launched and built. What's so different from then to now? How do you think, founders should approach this pressure, to kind of build a hockey stick kind of growth, but yet balance, this whole consumerization versus, the evidence-backed science and, building a business sustainably?
So, look, I have no right to give anybody any advice here. People who are entrepreneurs know what to do. I'll give you a view that I have about this challenge between How long do you wait before your scale really explodes, before your sales explode? I don't think there's a right answer. The answer for me would be work with your company that's funding you, whatever, that's a PE fund or whoever else, and show them the right path to growth. You can have a hockey stick by placing product in the market, by increasing your distribution 8, 10 times, and for distributors to take your product. And at some point, it's going to come back. Or you won't be able to sell as much and you will have a large return 3, 4 years out. Number one. Number two, the demand generation piece is the crux of this business. How do you convince consumers, mothers, fathers, doctors, hospitals to really prescribe your product or sell your product in a way that consumers tend to buy over and over again? I'll give you an example. When you think of the pharma industry, which is slightly different than nutrition, most pharma industry relies on a field force that is selling directly to doctors. Doctor writes a prescription, they take the prescription to a chemist or whatever, or go online and get the product. Now, you've got a couple of things there. You've got the chemist or the retailer or the online retailer, they can switch the product, or you've got the patient who will go buy the product again. Ideally, the reason you educate the patient, and you should do that immediately, is so that they don't have to go to the doctor again to get that prescription. They can continue to buy this product. So I think maybe 15 years ago, we waited 5, 6 years to do it. Maybe now, today, you do it in a year or 18 months. I've seen many nutrition products where they don't even start with the physician. It starts directly, with Instagram or YouTube, with influencers talking about it and building it. And then, look, who am I to tell you not to do that? But I just think that 3 things are important. Distinguishing your product and differentiating it based on something. If that is celebrity, it's very hard to distinguish a nutrition product. Science is really important, data is important. So I think that's important. Number 2, to your point, if it's not available, the patient's not going to be able to buy it. But the good news today is you can go to Zepto, you can go to Blinkit, you can go to Amazon, you can go to Flipkart, you can have 10 channels that did not exist 15 years ago. And many of these channels are pretty important because your buyer, especially if the buyer is between ages 18, 35, is not buying from a corner store. I mean, that's probably the last place they'll go to. So I think those points. So therefore, the balance is between your timing. And my sense is that's gone much faster.
No, very true. And today also you have a lot of tools to design products. Unlike in the past, I mean, take Nutrify today. Amit has a fabulous Nutrify Genie, which can literally dig into thousands of trials, give you that evidence-based ingredients for you to kind of quickly put together a product, which addresses the need gap that you're trying to solve for, right? And you can leverage on science, but you can also use those artificial intelligence tools and a lot of available evidence empirically or scientifically. That leads to my next question.
Raja, before you answer that, I just want to add one thing from this room. How many people in this room think their vitamin D is adequate? How many people? That it's adequate, meaning above 30 when you measure it. How many people think it's below 30? You don't need a doctor today for vitamin D. Look at the sale of vitamin D and different types of vitamin D and how that's exploded. A large part of that is this education, this engagement with the media and with consumers to say, hey, look, make sure you take it because it impacts your bone, it impacts your long-term immunity, etc. So that's just one example. You don't need to go to doctors to get vitamin D. You can just go get different formats of vitamin D right at the chemist shop, or you can get it online. And I think there are many entrepreneurs who are building different types of formulations for vitamin D that one can take 68,000 IU, all the way to stuff you can drink in the water, mix in the juice, whatever.
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, the consumer education, using media responsibly, using influencers very responsibly, while at the same time, building it on evidence-based science is so important. And who has been able to do it, whether it's Abbott Nutrition back in 2009 or more recently, Lilly with all its GLP, GLP-1, wherein they were so focused on the HCP part, but at the same time tried to educate the larger consumer or the larger patient to have that conversation that with their HCP. I mean, cracking that model is so difficult. It's such an intricate hybrid model. There are so many things that you need to balance it. But if you are able to, then you can see. I mean, hockey stick growth is a given, right? So, but it's a very difficult model to crack.
So, Raja, I'll make one provocative statement here, and I'll tell you TV is dead. For us, all of anybody who's got a brand under 100 crores, don't even think about TV. There's just the amount of money you're going to spend on television advertising, ATL, which, by the way, was not true 18 years ago. We were spending a reasonable amount of money on television advertising. I would say you get much more targeted stuff on Insta. You get much more targeted stuff. In this country, we can't use, some formats because they're from China. But if you're in other countries, you can use other formats. Even things like ChatGPT and Claude, which absolutely should take some of your partnership money to start directing some of that thinking to that. So yeah, absolutely. So I would say that format is gone, and it's much better, much more targeted, and you can utilize your money much more effectively.
Well, thank you. I think that's a great insight. Quickly, and probably my last question, given the time, slightly different track. I think you get a lot of growth. It's a huge country, 1.4 billion. You have a very very global SECA plus, probably not even the SECA, which is almost the size of France. 70 million people. And then you have probably the a more aspiring middle class and so on and so forth. And you gave examples of even below the middle class kind of line who are very well invested in healthcare. I mean, the domestic market story is well sold, but out here in this room, if you see, there are a lot of international delegates. There are a lot of them have partnerships here or looking for partnerships. India has grown into a very very good source for such partnership to either source or to kind of bring their products in. But what's your advice to founders, to investors, for whom the international markets look compelling, while they are still kind of building the domestic story. What's your advice to them? How should they approach and how do they strike the right balance between domestic aspirations and the international markets for nutraceuticals or nutrition, or the larger space?
So look, I have a slightly contrary view, and that view is, if you look at our country, most of us in this room serve Scandinavia. I'll tell you what that means. We have a Scandinavia in this country, the top 70, 80 million people. Most of us serve those folks. That's a very small number of people. 100 million people in India. That are the aspirers. And the ones I mentioned to you who earn 10, 15, 20,000 rupees a month. If we can figure out the right product, scientific, data-backed, and sell it at volume, there lies a phenomenal opportunity. Not enough people are catering to that population from nutrition point of view. Number two, setting a business in any market in Europe or the US, I mean, it's very, very difficult. You need a ton of capital, you need a lot of talent, you need to set it up. To me, in some senses, I don't think we should focus there. I think there's a ton to do in this country. It's a very large population. Most of the population is not fully catered to from a nutrition point of view, and certainly from a pricing point of view. If you look at 100% of the multinationals in this country cater to Scandinavia, what we call Scandinavia in India. There are some Indian companies catering to the next 150 million, but the bottom 350, 500 million folks who are, with growth of India, 6-7% a year, are rising up every year. People are moving forward. That population is not really catered to in a significant way. And whenever I would tell my bosses this in the past, they would say, "Oh, don't waste my time. I'm not going to make any margin in that business." That's not true. There are plenty of people in other categories, not nutrition, making a good margin, catering to a population that very few people are catering to. Which is why if you're a founder, you're starting a business here in this country, forget about the US. It's too far away. I mean, you know, you need too much money to go to the US. You need, I mean, unless of course you're in a different category like transport or you're building software or whatever, then certainly set up an office there. In nutrition and products, my view is focus here. I wouldn't even go to Nepal or Bangladesh or anywhere else. Just focus here. If you focus just on the top 50 cities in India, there's a massive opportunity here. And for those who are skeptics, I'll tell you this. If you look at this city has 25 million people. This is the size of Australia in terms of population. We birth in Australia and India every year. 25 million kids are born in India every year. In just this city, there are every kind of population. There are villages. There is people paying $25,000 a month for their apartment in South Bombay and other parts. And there are folks living on, $100 a month or $200 a month. So there is opportunity here. Question is, can we manufacture, create a product, and can we, make a margin on it?
And great insight. I think all those numbers are astounding. Probably my takeaway is, if you're looking at India as a market, there's a great market to build brands, build a great business, high growth business. And if you're looking at partnerships, you can, kind of bring fantastic products into this market. But if you're able to scale up and have that operational excellence and you're able to manufacture high quality ingredients, you can have partnerships and kind of look at ingredient or product exports through partners who are well set in the US or Europe or anywhere else, right? So great. Thank you for this very, very insightful conversation, Rehan. Really appreciate your time, and thank you everyone for being a wonderful audience. Thank you. Have a great rest of the conference.
Any questions, comments, or suggestions? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Am I audible? Thank you, sir, for that very insightful conversation. My name is Yashwant. I'm a founder of a startup called Benefic, and I'm also ex-Nestle, ex-PepsiCo, ex-Cadbury. So I've seen both sides of the world, larger organization and a startup. Your insight is really spot on. Like you said, Mumbai is a country, it's not a city, and that really struck me. My question to you, sir, is when you're scaling a product within your organization, as a head of the organization, not every product that you say go and scale. Out of 10 products, probably you'll say 4 are ready to scale, or 6 probably will incubate for some time and see if they want to have a natural death of its own. What are those top 3 things that you look in India and say, this particular product is now ready to scale? Is it the price point? Is it the volume? Or is it the repeat purchase rate? I want to hear your thoughts when you say, this is my tick boxes that go ahead and pump 100 crores into this and make it 1,000 crores.
My view on this is, first, there's nothing called India. Nothing. There's no market called India. We have micro markets all over the country, and we have the top metro cities and then the next set of cities. So if you're launching a product, I would, especially as a founder, I would save your money and focus on one city and even micro markets in that city. The second thing for me to go from city 1 to city 3, not city 5, but just city 3, is what type of repeat purchase do you see and where do you need to, for example, if you launch in, forget about, even Bombay is too large a city. If you launch in Vashi and you launch in Prabhadevi, two very different types of micro markets, you will have the data within 3 months to say, what feedback are you getting from your retailers, your partners, etc. And at that point, you can say you can expand in rest of Bombay. The worry I have, and certainly as a former investor, it's very easy to say, oh, let me go spend $5 million, especially if you've raised a lot of money, and let me launch in India. There really is no India. these are multiple micro markets, number one. Number two is the repeat sale, I think is really important. Number three is what do you need to do? You don't have to have the same formulation for the product in the whole country. So you can have a product SKU for the top 10 cities, and you can have a very different price and a different SKU with a different package point for other cities in the country. So, I'm just going to throw this out there, especially for those folks who know India. If you're selling a product, an SKU in Vashi or in Ulhasnagar, I'd venture to say check how you're doing in Agra or in Aligarh. I mean, you've got to, the patient or the consumer has to be able to know the product. The doctor has to write it if you're going to use physicians. But the price point is really important. And it does change. It's not always, Patna certainly. Patna is when we were launching a product many years ago, we found that Patna and Madhya Pradesh were actually big volumes for us. Because the folks who could afford it in Patna, they're not going to go to Delhi to buy it. They will want to buy that product in Patna. So I think a lot depends again on your micro market, your repeat sale, and again your data on SKU pricing, type of product. That data is really important, and you'll know it within 3-6 months how to focus that. That would be my view.
Thank you very much.
One last question probably, and we can wind up. Yes, please.
I'm Satyadev Tiwari, founder of Volsante. Rehan had an opportunity to work with you with Novartis and GSK. My question is very fundamental. So if you really see healthcare as an opportunity or healthcare as a responsibility, I think when we see the healthcare as an opportunity, we are more commerce driven. And if it's a responsibility, I think we are more grounded. My question is, and I always felt like working in the pharma industry for more than 2 decades, that despite advent of all these newer modern medicines, the diseases are not going down. People are getting more and more sick. Cancer cases are rising. There's something fundamentally wrong somewhere. So, Rehan sir, what's your take on that? Are we doing something really on that?
Please tell that to the guys funding me. I'd love to say that it's not a commercial opportunity. I'm joking, but look, if you see all lifestyle diseases in our market, and look at many other markets around the world, they rise: sedentary lifestyle, lack of sunlight, lack of exercise, all those things that happen in any large city. I think between the balance, especially if you've raised money to build a business, you have a responsibility to your investors. First, to get your commercial model, your scale, your growth right. That absolutely, somebody's mother's pension fund is funding our growth. So absolutely, I mean, for me, that is absolutely important. Having said that, whatever we do, we can do in a responsible way. And to Raja's original question, between a hockey stick as you're going up, let's not try to do anything unethical or immoral. And there are a lot of stuff. You can look in the market, Google yourself, and you can see a lot of claims that are complete nonsense. And there's particularly a physician, I don't know if many of you read him on Twitter or on X, I think Dr. Abby Phillips. He talks a lot about this on a regular basis, which is, look, is this claim scientific or is this some nonsense that you just made up? Or you were justifying it because it's Ayurveda or whatever. By the way, I frankly think that there are a lot of Ayurvedic products that are very helpful, very useful. But you have to balance both. So it's not one or the other in my view. If we have raised money, as I'm doing now, as we have done now, we have an absolute responsibility to our investors to make sure that we deliver on their aspiration.
Just to add to what Rehan said, I think that's a great question. I think every founder, every responsible member of the organization should actually, kind of be very highly aware that it's an opportunity, but it's also a responsibility, right? How do you responsibly and sustainably take that and ensure that your credibility is built so that you are a going concern always, and you do something funny and invest more in the opportunity side and try to draw back on the responsibility, then that's actually a sign of danger. On the other aspect that you brought up, I think it's it's not that short term, right? See, as long as humankind exists, I'm sure there is some health problem to solve for. I mean, you know, what what was an epidemic before? I think over a period of time, science helped overcome that. We had infectious diseases, which was such a big burden, in the pre-independence and independence time. Today, we have been able to, kind of eradicate smallpox. Many other things. Cholera used to be such a big issue, so on and so forth. But but I think you have to look at it in a larger time horizon to see if we have made progress. I don't know the numbers. I don't know the exact statistics offhand, but suffice it to say that 70 odd years ago when we became independent, the life expectancy, what was it? It was probably mid late 40s to where we are today, late 70s or mid 70s. I think you know I think this whole combination of both science and marketing and making healthcare more accessible through delivery through good products, through good solutions and good care has really helped move the needle. And now what we are battling a different kind of disease burden. We have moved away from the infectious disease burden, and we are today having a lifestyle disease burden. I don't know what it will be 20 years from now. You know, maybe it could be mental health. Maybe it could be something else. But I think it will continue to evolve, and there will be some solutions. So in my view, the future is still bright. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience, and thank you for indulging us. Thank you, Rehan, for a very insightful conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.